The Thai F-16A OCU is probably the worst F-16 in the game. The vehicle itself is actually pretty good, but the fact that it's placed in 13.7 and is missing a ton of things just makes it so bad. This F-16 has a top speed of 2,146 kilometers per hour. This is pretty on par for a 13.7. The only thing it's really missing in this BR bracket is acceleration due to the weak thrust. The OCU speed is quite average, and I didn't really have any complaints about it, so I'm just going to give it a 7 out of 10. Moving over to agility and maneuverability, it is an F-16A variant, so it is a pretty good dogfighter. It still struggles against the Rafale, the Typhoon, the F-16AJ, and the Gripen, but every other vehicle it's pretty competitive with. But for the most part, as with any aircraft, it is mostly about the pilot and less about the aircraft itself. So for agility, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 just because you do have the ability to kind of beat everyone in this BR bracket if you're good enough. Moving over to offensive armament, you do get a 20mm Vulcan that's always spicy. You get access to Python 3s, AM9Ls, AM9Ms, and AIM-120As. All in all, this is actually a really good selection for an F-16. You can't really go wrong with this loadout, you just will suffer in some close combat scenarios, although the Python 3 kind of makes up for that. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for offense. So you may be saying to yourself, how is this F-16 the worst one in the game? Well, I'm getting to that part right now. As for defense, it gets a grand total of 45 countermeasures with only 15 being large caliber. This is the least and the worst loadout that you get by far at top tier. In addition, you don't have any MOS systems, but you do have the standard RWR. But having that low amount of countermeasures is just such a hindrance to this F-16, so I'm legit gonna give it a 2 out of 10 for defense. Moving on to cast ability, for Japan, this is actually a really good vehicle. You get 6 AGM-65Ds, and you can carry up to 6 Paveway 2 guided bombs. You of course get some minor dumb munitions, but you don't really want to use those. Being placed at 12.7 ground, you are facing the top tier SPAA that will outrange you. The Mavericks are too slow, and the GBUs are too short of range to kind of counter SPAA. But overall, Japan did need this cast ability, so I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Moving over to electronics, this vehicle features a mechanical radar, which is actually pretty good overall. It also is notably lacking any sort of HMD, which absolutely sucks at 13.7. As previously mentioned, its RWR is pretty standard, and it is lacking any sort of MOS system. In addition, for its targeting pod, it is lacking any thermals because it is stuck with an Atlas 2 targeting pod. Compared to other 13.0s and 13.7s in the game, the electronics on this thing are absolutely atrocious. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. Moving over to durability, it is an F-16 airframe, so it will struggle once it's hit, but it's not the end of the world. A few times though, I was able to actually tank a shot and keep fighting, although the enemies would eventually take me out with their missiles. So for durability, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Moving over to difficulty, this thing is extremely hard to use because you are lacking so many electronic systems, and you are lacking things to make up for the faults in its design. So with 10 being the easiest and 1 being the hardest, I'm going to give this thing a 1. It's just not good enough to be easy to play. Likewise, its fun value is absolutely atrocious. I hated every minute of recording this video. So for the fun value, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 10. Having Japan ground pretty much maxed out, it's actually really important to have the cast option available, although the F-16AJ filled that spot for me already. So for the overall value, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And this leads to its overall score of a 47 out of 100, which on my grading scale puts it at a low C. So if you had a choice of actually grinding out this vehicle, I would highly recommend that you do not grind out this vehicle. It's not worth it in the long run.